The Lib Dems candidate for mayor took aim at Sadiq Khan today for his record on crime and policing in the capital. At the party's conference in Bournemouth, Rob Blackie firmly pointed the finger at the mayor of London for being asleep on the job. From there, our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
He's a political novice with a mountain to climb. Rob Blackie is the Liberal Democrats' choice to take on Sadiq Khan, and he's pinning his hopes on challenging the mayor's record on crime.
Sadiq Khan has been asleep on the job with crime. Under him, in the last 7 years, rape and serious sexual assault convictions have fallen through the floor.
In his first speech to a Liberal Democrat conference, he told delegates in Bournemouth the Met was wasting thousands of hours of police time searching people for cannabis.
And from the start of next year, they'll be searching even more people as part of a bizarre crackdown on laughing gas. What an absurd, twisted set of priorities.
But Mr Blackie's ambition to take control of City Hall must first face a reality check. The Lib Dems have never come close to winning the mayoral prize. In the last 3 elections, they were beaten into 4th place, behind the Greens.
We do not believe that the Mayor of London should impose a no-smoking ban in all public places.
In 2004, the veteran Lib Dem MP Simon Hughes was the party's candidate. Back then, he managed to come 3rd. You didn't win in 2004, but what do you think the secret of success is?
You have to choose, as the mayoral candidate, the 1 or 2 issues that most resonate, most relate to most people, that would change the way London feels and you feel as a London voter. If you can get that right, then actually there's nothing stopping any candidate winning.
Can the Lib Dems ever win City Hall?
It's a challenge at the moment. I'm not going to pretend we could win the Mayor of London easily next time, but stranger things have happened. What if Jeremy Corbyn suddenly came into the race? Sadiq's not that popular. The Conservative candidate will not appeal to everyone. So, you know, there is always that opportunity.
How likely is it you'll be London's next mayor?
Well, we have 2 great advantages here. The mayor is getting a little bit tired, and I think people feel he hasn't done a particularly good job, particularly on crime. And the Conservatives have largely given up in London.
But just in case, Rob Blackie does have a plan B. He's also standing as a candidate in the election for the London Assembly. Simon Harris, ITV News, Bournemouth.
Now you can tell a general election isn't too far away. Sir Ed Davey used his speech at the party's conference to fire up Liberal Democrat members to challenge Tory seats in what he calls the Blue Wall. He sat down with our political correspondent Simon Harris, who started by asking the MP for Kingston how many Conservative seats in and around the capital he was predicting his party could gain.
What I can tell you is we're going to win quite a few seats in London and the home counties, seats where it's a real fight between the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives, where Labour's nowhere. Those are the sorts of seats that we can win. Seats like Wimbledon, seats like Carshalton and Wallington, seats like Esher and Walton and Guildford, and there are a number of others too.
How are you going to exploit Rishi Sunak's backtracking on net zero targets?
We're going to say that he's betraying our country's economic future. What people, I think, get is that not only do we need action on net zero, but we've got to lead the world in the technologies and industries that we'll need in that economy. And if we don't, we'll be handing the future to China. That's not acceptable.
So where do you stand on ULEZ?
Well, ULEZ isn't about climate change, is it? It's about air pollution. And I think it's, for outer London, it's been very badly designed. For inner London, it made sense.
But is the battle lost?
No, I'm still fighting for my constituents, and Liberal Democrats will continue to fight for a change. I've argued that the ULEZ should be delayed. I think it should be suspended now, off the table, so we can actually design something that does deal with the air pollution, but does it in a fair way. It's so wrong that people who are on very low incomes are being forced to either pay a huge amount or buy a car that they can't afford.
Many voters in London and the South East wanted to stay in the EU. Why won't you offer them some hope in the way of returning or closer ties?
Well, people know that the Liberal Democrats are the most pro-European party. They know that we want Britain back at the heart of Europe, and they see in our policy...
You seem scared to say that we'd be better off back in the EU.
Well, I've just said we want to be at the heart of Europe, and I've also said that we want to approach that in a very practical way. You know, at the moment...
But not going back into the EU.
Well, that's currently not on the table. What is on the table is how we improve the relationship with our European friends. How do we rebuild the trust? The Conservatives so soured that.
Do you think Britain will ever rejoin the EU?
Listen, I just don't see that on the table at the moment.
Do you suffer from voter recognition problems? People don't know who Sir Ed Davey is.
Well, you know, I think it's the challenge for a Liberal Democrat leader when they come to their first election. Paddy had it, Nick Clegg had it, Charles Kennedy even had it. You know, people aren't necessarily aware that you are the leader of the Liberal Democrats until they see the general election. But what I'm finding is when people hear what I and the party have to say at close quarters in those by-elections, they really like what they see and what they hear.
Sir Ed Davey, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
Next, the Mayor made his way up to Leeds today to join 4 Labour mayors from the north who are calling on ministers to think again about turning their backs on HS2. It comes after suggestions the project could be scrapped beyond the Midlands and into central London. Sadiq Khan warned it would cause huge economic damage, and now 1,200 workers have been stood down. Here's our political correspondent Simon Harris.
Earlier this summer, there were 1,000 workers on the construction site at Euston. But now work on the HS2 station is on hold for at least 2 years. The project has had a devastating impact on Drummond Street's famous curry houses.
Our lunchtime trade was very busy, and now I think it's hardly any, because we used to feed over hundreds a lunch, and now we only do 20, 30 a lunch, that's it.
It's not just local businesses and residents whose lives have been turned upside down. HS2's contractors like Mace are also in limbo.
1 minute the Prime Minister and the Chancellor standing up telling everyone the rail line is going to Euston, and 3 weeks later they said no, it's being paused for 2 years, so we had to demobilise over 1,200 people.
The fastest trains between Birmingham and Euston currently do the journey in 79 minutes. On HS2 it was meant to take 49 minutes, shaving off half an hour. But instead of going to Euston, trains from Birmingham will terminate in West London at Old Oak Common after travelling for 42 minutes. Passengers will have to change onto the Elizabeth line. Finishing the journey to Euston will take a lot longer than 7 minutes. The station at Old Oak Common hasn't been built yet, but this is where it'll be. So this is where we'll start the clock. By the time we reached Paddington, the 7 minutes was almost up.
Paddington. This is the train to Shenfield.
According to TfL's website, the quickest way to get to Euston is to take the Elizabeth line to Tottenham Court Road and then change onto the Northern line. 9.5 minutes into the journey, we were at Bond Street. 15 minutes into the journey, we were waiting for a tube at Tottenham Court Road. And waiting and waiting. Eventually, we were on the move again, but the clock was ticking. 28 minutes after leaving Old Oak Common, we finally arrived at Euston. By the time we made it to the concourse, our journey had taken more than 31 minutes.
The new high-speed line between Birmingham to London, it will take longer than the current links between central London and Birmingham. That makes no sense to me.
Today, Sadiq Khan joined forces with other Labour mayors from the north of England to urge the government to finish HS2 in full. But it's emerged Rishi Sunak may have hired Andrew Gilligan, Boris Johnson's former cycling supremo, as his HS2 advisor. Downing Street wouldn't comment, but 10 months ago, Gilligan wrote a report calling for HS2 to be scrapped and for the Euston site to be sold off to developers. Simon Harris, ITV News, Euston.
The Prime Minister says the incident in Croydon has left him appalled and angered. In an interview with ITV News, Rishi Sunak said he was shocked that Eliane had been robbed of her life. The PM also spoke about other issues concerning the capital as he sat down with our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
It's just absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking. The idea that a young girl, not that much older than my own daughters, could just be robbed of her life, completely innocent, just on her way to school, is horrific. And I'm sure everyone will be as appalled about it as I am, but I'm also angry. I'm also angry that something like that happened, and that's why, for the most heinous crimes that people commit in our country, they should just be locked up for life. That's what people want to see, that's what we're going to deliver, because that's the only way to make sure people face the justice that they deserve when they do awful things.
Do you think more needs to be done to protect children going to school?
So I recently met with the Met Commissioner to talk about knife crime, because the government just recently outlined a bunch of new powers to go further to tackle knife crime. That's making sure that we can give the police the powers they need to confiscate knives that they might find when they're doing something else. For example, very practical thing that the police have said will help them. We're doing that. We're toughening up the sentencing for the people who commit these crimes, and we've given the police powers like stop and search, which means that they can confiscate, and they have over 100,000 knives off our streets. Now, those are all the things we're doing, and we're going further. The police asked for extra things. As I said, I met with the police just a few weeks ago, and we're giving them those extra powers as well, because we must keep going to stamp out this awful scourge.
Can I talk about the mayoral election? Is someone who likes a tweet depicting Enoch Powell saying it's not too late to take London back the right person to be your candidate?
Look, I think Susan Hall will be a fantastic mayor for London. I think everyone can see that Sadiq Khan's track record is one that hasn't delivered. He hasn't built enough houses, particularly for young Londoners. You know, the transport network, when you think about it, he's imposing £12.50 on families just to take their kids to school or get to work or do the weekly shop. And when it comes to crime, I'm sorry, the record is just not good enough. So Susan is someone who will fix all of those things, and particularly on crime. You know, Susan is someone who shares my values and Londoners' values.
You wouldn't like a tweet like that.
Yeah, but what Susan is focused on is delivering for Londoners. You know, better quality, more housing for young people, not imposing the ULEZ charge on families that are just trying to get about their day-to-day lives, and making sure that our streets are safe. Those are Londoners' priorities. That's what Susan is focused on delivering, and I very much will be supporting her and want to work with her to deliver that for London.
Which of her policies do you like best?
Oh, I said all of them, right, when it comes to the things that I've mentioned. Building more houses in the right places to get young Londoners on the housing ladder, making sure that our streets are safe, that we give the police the powers they need, like stop and search, to confiscate knives, take them away, and whether it's transport, making sure that we're not imposing charges like ULEZ on working families who are just trying to go about their day-to-day lives. Those are three very big policy areas. Susan's values are the right ones, and that's why I think she'll be a great mayor for London.
She's the first Tory candidate to not be invited to speak at a Tory conference.
I bet Susan is working very hard with me. As I said, we're working hard to deliver for Londoners, and that's on these three areas are the things that they want us to focus on. Right, it's not about speaking at this conference or that conference. It's about saying we're going to put more police officers on the street. We're going to give them the powers that they need to take knives off the street. We're going to lock criminals up for life, because that's what the most heinous criminals deserve. It's about building houses in the right place, which Sadiq Khan has spectacularly failed to do year after year after year. And it's about not imposing £12.50 on ordinary families who are just trying to go about their day-to-day lives. Like, those are all very practical things that Susan will deliver, which is why she's the right choice for London.
All right, Simon, let's go back to that last question that you just asked the Prime Minister. How unusual is it that the Tory candidate to be mayor doesn't actually address the conference?
It's not just unusual, it's unprecedented. I think I've covered every Conservative Party conference for the last 25 years, and I've heard every Conservative London mayoral candidate deliver a keynote speech. Geoffrey Archer did it in 1999, just ahead of the very first mayoral contest in 2000. Of course, later he had to step down as candidate after he was found guilty of committing perjury and perverting the course of justice. Steve Norris did it. Boris Johnson gave a speech twice as candidate. Zach Goldsmith did. Sean Bailey did more recently. So Susan Hall is the very first Conservative mayoral candidate not to be invited onto the main stage. This speech is usually seen as a curtain raiser for the candidate, a chance for the candidate to set out their stall to party members. Now, Susan Hall said yesterday she's not that bothered. She would far rather talk to Londoners. She will be in Manchester next week, but instead of on the main stage, she'll be talking at a handful of fringe events.
All right, Simon, thank you.